There are many things that people will struggle with, but mental issues are quite a hassle to deal with. This film shows how badly a mental illness can impact your life, and that of your loved one if you don't get it checked. Hello, welcome back to Quick Recaps. Today we shall explore a 2021 film called Cherry. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The film starts as a young 23-year-old man enters his truck and drives aggressively towards a place. He meets up with a guy in a car and gets something from him, before walking off like a man with a mission. He enters a bank and threatens the teller to give him all the money on her desk. The man states that at the moment, as he stands there looking at the terrified teller, some sadness came over him. So what caused the man to be like this? And what is his story? Cherry is a student at a local university. He falls in love at first sight with his classmate Emily. However, he is in a relationship with another girl who studies at a faraway university. When Emily approached him, Cherry really wants to be with her, but he cannot cheat on his girlfriend, Madison. The two had been dating since high school. Cherry goes to see Madison and she takes him to a party. The fact that Madison is popular with most dudes on campus despite being there for a little over a month makes Cherry wonder what extracurricular activities his girlfriend was involved in. For some reason, Cherry feels the need to mention working at a bakery for a cruel family, a job he quit after 2 weeks. Cherry is friends with a guy called James Lightfoot. James is an orphan who stays with his brother. Unfortunately, the brother came back from the war messed up, and so he is MIA most of the time. Cherry goes back to the bank as she had received an overdraft charge and tries to resolve it, but the teller is less than helpful. Cherry reveals he takes Xanax because of his anxiety. He suffers from panic attacks. Cherry is given ecstasy and invited to a party. At the party, high as a kite, he sees Emily, and the two talk and Cherry invites Emily for a walk, which results in a steamy affair. The two begin dating as their relationship blossoms. One day, Emily tells Cherry that she is leaving as she wants to study in Montreal. Cherry is heartbroken and tries to convince Emily to stay as her traveling to another country puts long-distance relationships into a sham. But Emily refuses. Due to his devastation, Cherry decides to enlist in the army as a medic to escape his heartbreak. The next day, Cherry is sworn in and James is angry because he knows how the army messed up his brother. That evening, Emily comes to the restaurant Cherry is working at to bid him farewell, but Cherry is mad because she comes with a dude, so he tells her to leave. That night at his apartment, he finds Emily inside. Emily has changed her mind as she realizes she is in love with Cherry too, and the two were meant for each other. Just before Cherry is deployed, the lovers get married. Cherry describes his experience at basic training in the army. There are rigorous exercises having to save countless dummies and physical tests. Cherry befriends a guy named Jimenez. Jimenez also wants to be a medic as he wants to take care of his pregnant girlfriend. Finally, the group is deployed. Some advice from Cherry is that you should never join the army. The group is sent to Iraq where the army gets violence for lunch, breakfast, and dinner. At first, Cherry is terrified, but soon gets a hang of the place and starts doing his job. The group is often sent to help civilians in the nearby villages, and Cherry thinks this is the sanest part of his day. However, he is sad when sometimes villagers die because the army doesn't have antibiotics. On Christmas Day, cheerleaders are sent to entertain the men. During his time, Cherry reveals he relieves his pent-up energy by thinking about his wife. Despite all this, he loves and misses her dearly. Jimenez and Cherry keep on talking and reminiscing about their days and their wives. One time, Cherry and his team got some of their vehicles ruined from holes in the ground. Consequently, they have to go back to base and get some supplies. Jimenez is part of the team that leaves, and Cherry stays behind. A few minutes later, the vehicle drives over a landmine, and the car explodes. All the guys in the car are killed instantly. This is the experience that breaks Cherry. All the energy and motivation he had to finish his time positively are done, and now he just wants to go home. His dream eventually comes true, and he even gets icing on top of his cake. He's awarded the Medal of Honor. At home, Emily is excited to see him, and the two finally reunite, hoping to never part again. However, Cherry starts having sleepless nights, and when he sleeps, he gets nightmares. To cope with his panic attacks and severe anxiety, he abuses his Xanax prescription. Cherry continues to be a supportive boyfriend, but he has episodes when he cannot control his anger. One time, he takes Emily to an event in a theater, but he starts yelling at other people. Cherry excuses himself, and in the bathroom, he punches the mirror. Every time, he feels as though his life is spiraling out of control, and that it's slowly affecting his mental health. His friend James is caught trying to sneak into another person's house, thinking it was Cherry's. James had injured his knee, and as a consequence, he had to use Oxycontin. Cherry bails James out of jail, and the two become as close as they were all those years ago. James feels the pain his friend is going through, and so he gives Cherry some Oxycontin. When he goes home, he speaks rudely to Emily, and even though she's trying hard to understand her husband, there's only so much she can handle. Cherry goes to see the military psychologist. He needs medication stronger than Xanax, and the doctor prescribes Oxycontin to decrease his PTSD symptoms. His growing addiction begins to frustrate Emily, and as a result, she begins taking Cherry's medication to deal with her own frustration of not knowing how to support him without drugs. The two lovers succumb to addiction, and when the Oxy is not enough, they start abusing heroin. Unfortunately, addiction is a monster that needs money to be controlled, and Cherry discovers he has a huge problem. One time, a guy called Phil's and Coke starts dealing for Cherry. He gives Cherry work to look after a safe. After they break into a safe, the two are excited to see it contains large doses of drugs. Cherry and Emily use most of the drugs secured inside for themselves. In their drunken state, they hear loud banging from the door and assume the cops might have caught up with them. The pair tries to rid the drugs and they realize it is pills and Coke. He sees the empty safe. Cherry learns that his drug dealer's boss, Black, is the owner of the safe and will kill all three of them for this. To get the money for the drugs they used, Cherry decides to rob a bank and pay back the money. At first, he uses simple gestures like writing threatening notes and getting the teller to give him what he wants. They manage to pay pills and Coke, but the guy doesn't leave them any money. Fortunately, Cherry had kept some for himself. He takes Emily to a restaurant and the two have an amazing date. Drug users don't eat much, so the two have become frail and weak. James calls Cherry wondering if he had robbed a bank, but when they review the testimonies of the witnesses, they realize the information is quite general. As a result of their daily heroin use, Cherry continues to rob banks frequently after he and Emily go through severe withdrawals. One day, Emily comes home really shaky, desperate for a fix. Emily overdoses and almost dies in a hospital. Cherry is blamed and forced by Emily's mother to leave her alone. Emily leaves her drug rehabilitation facility and reunites with Cherry. He tries to send her back and persuade her that he's no good for her. Emily doesn't care and tells Cherry she wants to be with him. She will get high on drugs again, no matter what. Emily also tells Cherry that one day those voices inside his head will just stop, and she will be there, supporting him every step of the way. Needing more money to support their addiction, he enlists Pills and Coke and his friend, James, to help him rob multiple tellers at once. During their robbery, James runs away, forcing Cherry to back out. He goes back to the car and Pills and Coke decide to rob the bank with him, provided he carries the gun. Pills and Coke shoot randomly in the bank, and this angers Cherry, who grabs the gun from him. Pills and Coke run away too, and Cherry is forced to rob the bank alone. As he drives away with James in a getaway car, Cherry stresses that Pills and Coke will likely rat him out if he gets caught. He convinces James to turn the car around and search for him, though James is scared of being caught and going to jail. They find Pills and Coke walking in the street. After putting Pills and Coke in the car, Cherry sees that he has been shot and is severely bleeding. They debate whether to take him to the hospital, but decide it is too risky, and he dies from his gunshot wound. They dump the body on the side of the road and part ways. Cherry reveals they never got to know how Pills and Coke was shot. Black later confronts Cherry outside of his home to settle the drug debt. The money he had paid Pills and Coke was nowhere near enough for the drugs they had consumed. Cherry feels he cannot continue robbing banks and risking his life, but Black threatens to harm Emily, leaving Cherry with no choice. Cherry kisses and says goodbye to Emily before performing one last robbery. It's sad to see how drained, exhausted, and frail the couple has become, with Emily being most affected. Don't do drugs, guys. Just don't. This scene brings us back to the beginning of the film. The sadness Cherry feels makes him realize he doesn't want to live his life in fear. During the robbery, Cherry persuades the bank teller to set off the alarm before he leaves with the money. Cherry gives Black all of the money. Cherry then walks out into the open road and gets the attention of the police by firing his gun in the air, proceeding to sit by the side of the road and get high one last time before police arrive and arrest him. Cherry detoxes and recovers in prison. At first, the withdrawal symptoms are so hard on him, but with time, patience, and regular working out schedules, he gets better. After spending 14 years serving his sentence, he's released on parole. As Cherry makes his way out of the prison, he looks at the vast facility that had somehow made him a better man. From across the road, he sees Emily, beautiful and healthy, waiting for him. Thank you for watching, but wait. Watch how this rapper, B-Rabbit, totally not Eminem, participated in underground rap battles and crushed them with his skills while his girlfriend sleeps with his best friend. That is an interesting story. You should check that out. Subscribe to Quick Recaps. That's all for today. Until next time.